All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. I am Robert Winfrey, your host. Thank you very much again for listening. Please interact with the product. A little bit like, comment, subscribe, review, share, all of it. All of it helps. I've been doing this for a while. I make the pitch every time. I don't expect it to grow at that all that much at this point. I do this as much because I enjoy it as for any other reason. So, but I'm gonna make the pitch because that's what you're supposed to do. Okay, big show tonight. We have UFC 257 took place yesterday, and well, we had some fights. We had some finishes, a lot of decisions. We'll go over all the fallout from that card, and there's going to be some pretty hefty fallout, especially from the main event. Also, it flew under a lot of people's radar for a lot of reasons, but Wednesday there was UFC on ESPN 20. We'll give you a review of that. And news of the week, such as it is. It's kind of a little bit light on the news this time around, but we'll do what we can. All right. So before we get any further, let me bring on my partner in crime for this evening. 4-1 Mania's jack of all trades, Jeffrey Harris. Jeff, how are you?
I know who doesn't have the best boxing in the UFC. And it's not the notorious Conor McGregor from Ireland.
Really? Because I was gonna. You can't set me up like that. Jessica I fought on this card, and Jessica I is the MMA equivalent of King Corbin.
Well, it's not Conor McGregor. So much for the so-called best boxer in MMA history or whatever nonsense he was trying to peddle.
Yeah,
Thinks
that was.
he's Muhammad Ali because he fought and lost to Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing that happened. Yeah, let's start with 257. Normally we try to go a bit more chronological, but you're all here to hear us talk about Conor McGregor. Let's start there. UFC 257, your main event. The aftermath from this we have to talk about with in tandem with the co-main event. So I'll touch on that in a second. Let's get to the specifics of this one. Main event from a very successful pay-per-view. I think was it Mike Bond reported that this was trending to do about at least 1.6 million buys. So very, very successful event. Anyway, in your main event, Dustin Poirier TKO's Conor McGregor in the second round. 2-something of the second, 232. I gave Poirier the first. Most people gave it to McGregor. I'm not at all married to my scorecard in that respect. There's a very, very cogent argument for McGregor taking the first. But once we get into the second, Poirier had been doing a good job of kind of slipping Conor's punches, of working in the pocket a little bit, which Conor's not great in the pocket. He's certainly got power, but he likes to either probe at you and make you extend and then counter you, or kind of lead the dance, and he wasn't really able to do either of those here. One of his main weapons he never actually used. I was really surprised by it, and I'm more surprised the more I think about it. But Conor steers, again, a lot's made of Conor's hands because that's how he gets his finishes the majority of the time. But Conor's success stems from his ability to set those up. A punch is only as good as its ability to land. And he steers people and sets his punches up with his kicks. And he didn't kick a whole lot in this fight. I was a little surprised. In particular, his front kick. He's very, very good at stabbing that kick into your ribs and just kind of making you miserable and making you do things you don't want to do with it. And I don't think he threw it once in this fight. Now, I don't know if that was a deliberate strategic read. I don't know if that was a reality of the leg kicks he took, because Poirier chewed his leg to pieces with calf kicks. Or if the Poirier's takedown early in the fight just kind of got his head out of it, decided it wasn't worth the risk of getting taken down again. I don't know, but he didn't really throw it. Again, second round comes out, a lot more of the same. Poirier kind of chopping with leg kicks. They slug. They both land on each other. I mean, Poirier got hit a couple of times. There was a right uppercut in the first that Conor landed that had Poirier I don't think as hurt as it looked, but his neck kind of snapped back. He did a little bit of a jig. I think it was more a balance issue than a hurt issue, but certainly didn't look good. But the damages kind of added up. Again, a leg kick as Poirier's back was to the fence. He landed a right hook. Conor, his movement compromised, got dinged a little bit there, couldn't get off the fence. Poirier spins, gets him back there, and just unloads until he's able to stop him with a right hook. This is the first TKO loss of McGregor's entire career. And the biggest win of Poirier's commercially by any, I would argue by essentially any metric you wanted to throw at it. This is the biggest win of his career.
He's not getting any pay-per-view points for this. Maybe that's why he was so grumpy after the fight and winning such a big fight.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of that, but he even mentioned it. Like, he didn't enjoy the process this time around. Didn't like being in Abu Dhabi for 2 weeks. Didn't feel like he normally did. So I don't know exactly what contributed to that particular mood, but whatever it was real.
Got him something for this,
It got him his contractually obligated pay. So whatever he's contractually obligated for show and win, and his $50,000 performance bonus because he got one of the performances of the night.
But I would assume for the Khabib fight he had to have gotten something because he was the interim champion.
If my understanding is correct, interim champions would do get pay-per-view. Like, interim champions and real champions get the same kind of like pay structure unless you specifically negotiate otherwise.
Okay.
So he would have as champion, he would have been entitled to pay-per-view points for the Khabib fight. Yes.
I mean, I can understand that because you're stuck there for a number of weeks. You can't really do anything and explore because you kind of have to stay isolated in quarantine, and then all you're doing is cutting weight. But I think Poirier deserves a lot of credit here. What a difference just a few years made for this guy. I think we always saw the potential in Poirier, Robert, but he always had sort of holes in his striking. I would say earlier in his career, Poirier was primarily a grappler. He's primarily a grappler and submission guy. But now he has a striking, and he's very well-rounded, and he's very dangerous. And he even said in the first fight with McGregor, he was kind of like a deer in the headlights. At the time, that fight was at featherweight in September 2014. I would say you could arguably have considered Poirier a top 5 featherweight at that time. And now he's 32. He's fought, he's been to the top of the mountain. He fought Khabib, came up short, rebounded from that. He's been in the fire. And I think, I picked him last week, and I was confident he had all the tools to put it together and make this happen. And I don't know, Conor, I don't think he has good defense, Robert. And I think his boxing is highly overrated. He wasn't checking the leg kicks, and he doesn't really like to defend his head either. And his head movement is not that great. It's never been great. And I've seen it in many fights in the past where he just stands with his head wide open, his head right there in front, and it's always been ripe for the picking. So and quite frankly, Nate Diaz and Khabib Nurmagomedov outboxed him in their fights. So I'm like, why is his boxing held in such high regard? I don't get it.
Nate didn't outbox him.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
He outstruck him standing up. Yes,
sure, but that's even then not as much as that fight's an odd case study. If you look at McGregor's skill set, because what Nate does so effectively is very little boxing. It's a lot more clinching. It's a lot more.
Okay, but in the
It's a lot
he
more
was getting kicked
dirtying.
apart standing up, and McGregor shot on him before getting submitted.
Oh, in their first fight.
Yes, in the first fight.
In their first fight, Conor completely gassed himself out. And Nate, whatever faults and flaws there might be in the fighting ability of Nate Diaz, the man has a chin that is almost impossible to crack. And look, there's the very famous quote about fatigue making cowards of men for a reason. You take the best
And,
fighter in the world, you make them tired, and they're not even close to what they used to
and
be.
Habib knocked him flat on his rear with a
Uh,
punch.
he, that's technically a knockdown, but I don't think he landed on his butt when he got hit like that. I mean,
He
Khabib
was on the ground.
was down. I'd have to double check. He got, again, technically speaking, he got dropped. That's absolutely true.
His boxing is highly overrated. I'm sorry.
Again, it's a lot of people not understanding when Conor's game works. You have to understand what makes it work, not just look at the flashy
Boxing
finish.
is hit and not get hit. That is the that's the sweet science.
Well, that's all fighting. That's not just boxing. MMA is the
Even
same
when
way.
even when he knocked out Jose Aldo, Aldo connected before he went to sleep.
Yeah, Aldo threw a looping punch and was unconscious when it landed on Conor. That's true. Now, look, what makes Conor's game work?
I just think Conor is just not. I think he's reckless and sloppy.
Um,
And his cardio is very questionable as
his
well.
his cardio is absolutely a big question mark. That's absolutely true. That's been kind of the book on him for a long time now. And I mean,
Let's see.
to be fair to him, a lot of people have that
kind
problem.
of went into the later rounds that he won was the Nate Diaz rematch. That's the only one. And that fight was over 4 years ago.
Yeah, the inactivity's been a big problem for him in that respect.
I mean, that's his fault too. That's partially his fault.
Yeah.
Maybe not the last year, with the pandemic, but all those SWATs before that, not being a defending champion, chasing the fight with Mayweather, which is a big moment.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him one bit for that with that payday. Not one bit.
But after the Mayweather fight, let's see, he didn't fight for 2 years.
Yeah.
He didn't fight in MMA for 2 years after Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
he could have easily fought earlier in 2018 and defended the lightweight title.
Yeah, sort of. Wasn't 18 when he had the fight with Mayweather though?
No, that was August 2017.
Okay, yeah, so he probably could have at some point in 18 had a title defense. Either tried to defend the title or come back sooner after being stripped of it. Either way. Yeah, his activity level has been a pretty big problem. I mean, he was off for a while after the Khabib loss before he fought Cerrone. That was what, a year? That was over a year layoff, right?
Let's see.
Double check that.
Yeah, it was. But he was also suspended because of he was suspended after the
Well, again, either way, we're looking at over a year off. Then
yeah, but that was
little over a year off again.
Well,
I
don't know if he had a 6-month, but he was suspended for his part in the post-fight brawl.
I'm pretty sure it was just kind of a 6 to 8 month thing. It was a lot. It was
yeah, that was
fairly small.
Another long layoff. And
and
look, how much I love Cerrone, but fighting a 36-year-old.
That was a setup. Look, let's call a spade a spade. I'm with you. I respect the heck out of Donald Cerrone, but he was there to make Conor look good.
Yeah.
Conor is the worst possible matchup for Cerrone in terms of style.
Cerrone had his last run at that point, and he wasn't having another glorious comeback at that time.
Cerrone's washed. He'll still get some wins in the UFC, but
Well, hopefully not, because I kind of hope he retires.
I don't disagree with you there. So yeah, this was a bad loss for Conor. Um, I laughed so hard. There's a picture floating around on the
Wait,
internet.
okay. I just saw they overturned the Nico Price fight with Cerrone because he
Well, it's
tested
just
positive for marijuana. Did that?
well, that was a draw anyway, right?
So what happens when you overturn a draw?
I don't know.
It's there now. It's a like what is?
What a stupid thing.
It's a
What a
draw. It was a draw
stupid
for
thing.
Cerrone too. So what? So what?
Well, remember they did that same thing with the first fight between Bigfoot Silva and Mark Hunt, right?
Why
They
Las
over they
Vegas?
over
Why?
yeah, they overturned it. So Silva had an extra no contest on his record, while Mark Hunt still had the draw. I seem to recall. Just stupid thing. So
Um,
stupid thing.
okay,
Anyway,
so
um, before we move on to Poirier, who I do want to give a lot of credit
okay.
to because he's his place in the division is the most relevant as it pertains to the title picture going forward. Um, Again, this is Conor's first loss via strikes. His next fight's going to be a critical fight for him. He's never lost two in a row. Pretty sure at least. But if he drops back-to-back fights, that would be a potentially back-breaking turn for his career. So if he wants to go the celebrity, the kind of money fight celebrity status thing, you got the third fight with Nate Diaz kind of hanging out there. They could try to cash in for those two, which I wouldn't hate. Not my favorite fight potentially, but I think you could make sense for both guys. If he wants to try and get into the title picture again, he's got to fight another ranked contender. Now, a bunch of the ranked contenders are going to be busy with each other or just not be interested in fighting him in some respects. I think if he wants to go ranked, I saw people float the idea, and I don't think it's wrong. I think you could maybe do Conor versus Tony Ferguson. That's a winnable fight for both guys. It's a fight that could easily main event a pay-per-view and be non-title. And again, you've got Tony potentially on the downside now after two consecutive losses, both of them horribly lopsided. And if Conor can beat him, he's right back in the title picture. If Tony can beat Conor, it's one of the bigger wins of his career, if not the biggest. I think I'd have to go back to some of his wins more
Look, here's
specifically.
my thing. You can't always write off a fighter after back-to-back losses.
I'm not writing him off. It just needs to be noted. Those are two bad losses. Do I think Tony is still a very, very capable fighter and still deservedly a ranked lightweight contender? Absolutely.
Well, for Conor too. As down as I have been about Conor, if he were to lose two back-to-back, you don't have to necessarily write him off completely.
In terms of being a viable, kind of main event property for the UFC, no. But if he drops a second one, again, say they make Tony and he loses, I don't think he's ever getting back to the title at that point.
Okay. Well, I mean, how badly does he even need a title anymore?
That's a valid question. If he just wants the most valuable fight he can in terms of money, it's the Diaz trilogy fight. I don't think there's
here's my thing with George Masvidal. George Masvidal, very fun, entertaining fighter. But I just don't think Masvidal is good enough to become an undisputed UFC champion. You know what I mean?
And I understand your point. I disagree with it, but I understand.
Does he need to be champion to be successful and get what he wants out of his career? At this point, I'm not sure.
That's entirely down to what he wants out of his career. If he just if you know, and I see your point about Jorge. If all he wants is the most money in terms of the fights that he can draw, the biggest, that's probably not a fight with Kamaru Usman at the moment. Masvidal's a much bigger star than Kamaru Usman.
And my issue with Conor is I wonder if some of the problems he's been facing in the last few years, after becoming a double champion, has success gotten to his head, being the linchpin of like combat sports, being the biggest name in combat sports, getting all that money, and then either people are targeting him or being surrounded by bad influences. Like, why did no one talk him down from that bus attack? Like no one, did no one try to stop him or advise him or just try to keep him from doing it? Like, that's, I don't know. Like,
question.
I don't know who he's surrounding himself with, but I feel like he's not surrounded himself with the right people.
That's a somewhat fair observation. I don't know if it's as true now as it used to be. He seems to have mellowed a little bit over the last couple of years.
Hopefully, I would hope so.
Well, the last year in particular.
But then look, and I know he has not been convicted or arrested, but then there are those investigations.
In fairness, he's not even been charged.
Right.
He is being investigated.
There were multiple investigations against him.
Yes.
One which happened. I don't think he was arrested, but I think he was questioned for an incident last year.
Yeah, there was that thing in Corsica, I seem to recall.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
One of the I think one of his accusers in Ireland filed a civil suit against him this last fairly recently. Now again, how much of this is targeting a famous person? How much of this is he is genuinely guilty? I have no earthly idea. I have no way of knowing.
But it's just that there was more than one instance. Like there were two, I believe, two in Ireland, and then the thing in Corsica, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So all I'm saying is it troubles me to some degree. It's concerning.
That's fair. So again, what's next for Conor? That's going to depend on what Conor wants. If he wants to get back into the title picture, he's got to fight one of the killers. He's got to fight again someone like Tony Ferguson.
That's the fight. Ideally, that's the fight I want.
I think it's the fight both fighters should want too, because there are very clear ways both of them can win that fight.
Ariel Helwani is campaigning for the trilogy fight with Nate Diaz.
I also don't hate that. Again, this is down to what Conor wants his long-term trajectory to be at this point. Mm-hmm. If what he wants next is a big paycheck and I won't say easy fight, because Nate's not an easy fight, but a paycheck with less dire career consequences attached to it. I don't think he's. If he wants to fight for the title again, Felder is certainly an option.
He'd have to fight someone like Justin Gaethje if he wants to fight.
Yeah, he's got to fight again. A Felder, a Ferguson, a Gaethje, somebody like that. That's where he is right now. And of those choices,
even if you fight outside the top 5, Robert, those fights are still dangerous.
Oh yeah,
especially at lightweight.
Oh yeah,
like Kevin Lee is ranked number 11. That could still be a dangerous fight for Conor.
Very.
Like I could see him beating Kevin Lee, but I could also see Kevin Lee getting an upset there. Kevin Lee is very skilled, very formidable, very tough.
You've got Rafael dos Anjos returning to lightweight. We could finally
Now,
get that fight that was
Beneil,
supposed to happen.
Islam Makhachev, I would pick to beat Conor.
Stylistically, yes, I tend to agree.
Beneil Dariush, like I would pick Conor to win that fight, but Dariush might pose problems for Conor.
Look, we're talking about lightweight. It's the most
Yeah,
stacked division in the sport.
Lightweight is very competitive. It's very
I'm
game.
not. There's very few fights that you could make that I would wind up going. That would be surprised to see either person win.
Now, if they were to, for example, dig up Anthony Pettis, Carlos Condit. I know, yeah, but fighters have been gone before, Robert. Come on.
Pettis has signed with Bellator.
Huh?
Pettis signed with Bellator. Oh, PFL, sorry. He signed with PFL.
Yeah, but will PFL even be around in 2021?
It's a fair question, especially with NBC shutting down NBCS. Oh, with NBC shutting down NBCSN, that's a very fair question.
So, I mean, I'm just saying, if you like those are fights you could dig up to make.
I would favor Conor pretty heavily over Pettis.
That's my point. That's my point. You could dig up Pettis. You could dig up Pettis and Condit to give Conor winnable fights that are still kind of marquee, but like are not as like they're not like the killers of their divisions. You know what I mean?
That's what the Diaz fight.
No offense to Pettis and Condit, but they're just not at that point in their careers.
Well, that's what the Diaz fight represents, I think, in a lot of respects, because Nate, while he is a very popular figure and has a lot of skill in certain respects, he hasn't fought since he and Conor had that second fight. No, sorry, he fought Masvidal. Sorry, hasn't fought since the Masvidal fight. My mistake. So he's been out for a while.
Okay.
I think he's technically ranked, but I'd have to double check. He shouldn't be if he is. But that's kind of what.
And he also fought Pettis in 2019, so he did fight twice in 2019 at least.
Yeah. But that's kind of what the Diaz fight would be. It's a little bit of a rehab fight. It's not a gimme, but it's a fight that would do very well commercially.
Condit could be a rehab fight too. That's what I'm saying.
Well, he'd have to go up to
fight it like if he wants like a catch weight, like you know.
He'd have to go all the way up to welterweight to fight Condit.
Probably.
So again, and if that's more what he's looking at doing, that's a viable option as well.
Or maybe he goes to boxing again and fights Jake Paul. Who knows? Or Manny Pacquiao.
Pacquiao moved on. Manny Pacquiao, I think, like in the wake of Conor's loss, has like signed for his title fight.
Pacquiao is still fighting, huh?
Yeah, he's a world champion. He's 42, I think. But yeah, he had his last fight actually was pretty darn good.
I thought he was winding down and focusing on politics, but I guess not.
42-year-old Manny Pacquiao still out there getting it done, and God bless him.
Good for him.
So let's move on to talk about Dustin Poirier here. And I want to talk about him specifically before we talk about the implications from the co-main kind of thing. This needs to be said out loud. If Khabib is actually retired or taking a significant sabbatical, if he's out of the picture, however you want to kind of phrase that, Poirier might be the best lightweight on earth. That doesn't mean he can't be beaten, but he might be the best. I can't call him, the best lightweight ever. That's Khabib. I think that's pretty clear at this point. But if you look at the resume of Dustin Poirier, that man has an all-time great resume, even if we just limit it to lightweight. He comes up, he beats Carlos Diego Ferreira, who's looked pretty good recently. Let me bring up his full record. I don't want to miss anything here. Finishes Ferreira in the first, finishes Yancy Medeiros in the first, beats Joe Duffy, knocks out Bobby Green, loses to Michael Johnson. His rebound fight from that was Jim Miller, and in 2017, Jim Miller still had a fair amount of fight left in him. Beats Miller, fights to no contest with Eddie Alvarez in a brutal fight, submits Anthony Pettis, TKO's Justin Gaethje, TKO's Eddie Alvarez, clearly defeats Max Holloway via decision, loses to Khabib, has a war with Dan Hooker, and has now stopped Conor McGregor. That's an all-timer's resume at lightweight. Again, where you want to rank him if you do the specific rankings, I don't know. That's gonna come down to personal preference.
The only thing he's missing is the UFC title. That's the only thing.
The undisputed title is all he's missing, yes. Because he did technically have an interim belt.
Right.
He absolutely has an all-time great resume.
But I mean, look at Khabib. Beat Gaethje, beat Conor, beat Poirier, beat Dos Anjos. All champions.
Yeah. I mean, look, Khabib's the best. But Dustin, that man deserves a lot more respect than he has, I think.
I mean, man, his drive, because he's had some tough losses in his career. He's had some tough setbacks, but he always comes back swinging, and I really respect that.
Poirier's never lost 2 fights in a row his entire career.
And not to mention, he's always been like just a stand-up, upstanding ambassador for this sport. Never gets into trouble. His charity work. He had a wild youth, but he grew out of it, and he tries to set a good example for people. He's always assisting with charitable efforts.
Dustin Poirier is one of the handful of genuinely good human beings in MMA.
Yeah.
He's the man. You know what? Maybe I should just say it like this. If the UFC comes out in the next week and says, Khabib's retired, he's vacating the belt, and we're just giving it to Dustin Poirier, I wouldn't object at all. I would not object one iota to that.
I wouldn't object, no.
And his next fight's a title defense. But Poirier's next fight has to involve the undisputed title, whether they give it to somebody or it's vacant and he's fighting either way. That does kind of dovetail into the co-main, and and I want to talk about this in relationship to the lightweight division. Co-main event. Michael Chandler knocks out Dan Hooker, 2:30 of the first. Nice performance from Chandler. Hooker landed a couple of good leg kicks. In fact, that last calf kick he landed, you could see Chandler had a little bit of flashbacks to his Brent Primus fight, like, oh boy, not again. But he'd been throwing his right hand to the body, getting Hooker to circle to Chandler's left. This time he just shifted when he threw it, so he stepped through, followed it up with a left hook, crushed Hooker down, pounded him out. Cut a nice promo that was a mix of, he started out as Dusty Rhodes. I'm just a guy from a small town who's been kicked around, had been knocked down, but got back up every time, and every road led me to this point. And then he dovetailed into Ric Flair with a tear in my eye. This is the best moment of my professional career. I'm coming for that belt. You mentioned it last week. The man's 34. He doesn't have what's the phrase? He's not here for a long time. He's here for a good time.
Right.
He does. So I don't think we have, 5 years. We don't have 5 years.
He has less fights left than what he's put into his career so far, basically.
100%. And he knows it, and he's not wasting time with this performance and that call. He wants to fight for the belt next. Yeah. Again, whether he does or not is going to come down to a few other factors, but the top 4 of lightweight right now, as I see it, breaks down as follows.
Okay.
You have I'm excluding Khabib.
Okay.
have, in whatever order, these are not in order. These are just my top 4 guys at the moment. Poirier, Gaethje, Oliveira, and after this, probably Chandler. Those are your top 4 guys in position to be in the title picture for the next 2 title fights.
Here's the hang up. In the post-fight press conference, Poirier was very outspoken about not fighting Chandler. He doesn't want to fight Chandler. He said, "I guarantee my next fight won't be against Chandler. I would rather I'll sell some hot sauce instead." So he doesn't want to fight Chandler for the title.
Now, again, whether that's purely public negotiation by Poirier or he means it sincerely, that's either way. I know he said it, and I'm happy to, in some respects, take him at his word as far as that goes. He really does that for whatever reason. He doesn't want to do that next. You've got Charles.
I think that's a little disrespectful, quite honestly. As much as I like Poirier, I mean, like, come on here.
Yeah, I can see the point there.
Like Chandler has not done in the UFC what Poirier has done. I understand that. He came in, he beat a top-ranked opponent, knocked him out in the first round. He knocked out Benson Henderson in his last fight. He's beaten Benson Henderson twice.
Mm-hmm.
Benson Henderson is a former UFC champion. One of those wins was in 2016. So one of those wins was several years ago, okay?
The first one was because Benson debuted in Bellator at welterweight. He fought Chandler for the belt, I think, at lightweight. I can't remember the order of that.
He did. And won the vacant title. And then he beat Eddie Alvarez before Eddie Alvarez came to the UFC and became a lightweight champion himself. And yeah, he did have those losses to Will Brooks, but he bounced back from those. So I mean, I kind of just don't like that, and I feel like, he's had to go through a lot to get, fight for the title. But I mean, negotiate and get a better deal for yourself if you have to for the title. Do that. But I mean, I still find that kind of disrespectful and dismissive of Chandler, who had a spectacular debut.
For whatever it's worth, Dana White did indicate that he thinks Poirier and Chandler is the fight to make for the belt. That would leave, again, that does leave Gaethje in.
Okay with the idea of Oliveira for the title.
Which would, look, I don't think, there's not a permutation of those 4 guys fighting that is bad. There just isn't.
Okay.
I mean,
let's look at Oliveira. So
hang on for just 1 second.
Okay.
You can't tell me that a rematch with Justin Gaethje for Poirier, the way Gaethje has adapted his style after Poirier beat him, their rematch might be better than their first fight.
Mm-hmm. So Oliveira has won his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, last 8. He's had an 8-fight winning streak. Beat Ferguson, Kevin Lee, Jared Gordon, Nick Lentz, David Teemer, Jim Miller. So, only really Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson are really top-ranked opponents in that winning streak.
True, but he finished Lee and thoroughly dominated Ferguson.
Oliveira is still only 31. That's crazy. He's been fighting for a long time.
He's been in the UFC for like 10 years.
Oliveira is just a very interesting case. Just sort of what
his career. If I ever get the chance at some point in the future to get like the real kind of skinny on the twists and turns of his career, it would be a fascinating thing to look at. He's had a very, very
he's had quite a few setbacks and back-to-back losses.
Yeah.
He's managed to rally from quite a few ups and downs too, and now he's really, in the
Some of
best.
those downs being very significant.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's kind of like why I don't want to ever write off a guy, even on
Well,
back-to-back
in
losses
in
see.
somewhat fairness, it's easier to come back from back-to-back losses when you're in your early 20s.
Right. Yeah, 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 true. And like, because Ferguson's not a young man anymore.
No,
Uh,
Ferguson's 30. He's 36 at this point, I think, right?
right. But I
So
just
yeah,
remember that time Cub Swanson just
Swanson made him flare flop. He had the neck injury against Max Holloway.
yeah. He's had some tough
That
loss. He has had some tough losses. So,
really
but
tough ones.
but here's my point. Like, I wouldn't be against Oliveira getting a title shot even, but Chandler, I feel like he would be getting if he were to get a shot, it would be for the other. He's worked hard. He has worked hard and done some impressive things for his career. And it's not just about getting a win over Dan Hooker. It's like, the guy who beat Benson Henderson twice, the guy who beat Patricky Pitbull, the guy who beat Eddie Alvarez. He's had a very impressive career and he's done a lot of great things. You can't just because the fights happen in Bellator, you can't just overlook them. You know.
I completely agree. And look, no, there's not too many people who make as many jokes at the expense of Bellator as I do. But they do have some talented fighters, and they have some good fights on occasion.
But it was a great
So,
performance. Nonetheless, it was a great performance. I don't know what's happening with Dan Hooker.
uh,
He
real
he
tough
left his
loss for
gloves
him,
in
man.
there, so I
I,
don't
I,
know. I guess we'll
I don't
see.
know if I don't know if that was an issue of retirement or if he was just really, really frustrated with what happened. It could have been either. Yeah, that's I'm not going to say a total back-breaking loss for Dan Hooker, but that's a bad one, man. That's a real bad one. Uh, he's going to have a hard road back if he wants to get to the title picture. This was a bad loss for him. So, just last thing before we'll move on. What would again, if you're the matchmaker, you can kind of what do you do with the top of lightweight? What's your title fight and what's your number one contenders fight?
Okay. I mean, I would go ahead and book Poirier versus Chandler or Poirier versus Oliveira, just because if it's not Chandler, I feel like it's got to be Oliveira.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Gaethje's last fight, he lost. He
Yeah, and
got
I mean,
finished.
again, really, is there anyone who would complain about Gaethje and Chandler fighting with the winner getting the next title shot? Very clearly spelled out.
I want to
I
keep, but if here's my point. If Habib is relinquishing the title, I want to keep the division moving,
Yeah.
hopefully as soon as possible. So that's my main interest here.
That is kind of my assumption going forward, and I suppose we can talk about this as it relates to that
And this
incident.
fight was kind of viewed as it was partially viewed as sort of like a title eliminator. So it has to be. It has to be.
Yeah. Last thing I think on this situation, because you mentioned Khabib, the okay. Do you want to just say the misinformation campaign from the UFC as it relates to Khabib's status?
Because I brought this up Sorry.
No, you're good.
I brought this up last week, right? With the ABC garbage.
Yeah, we made fun of that.
And now is like, Dana White's like, Khabib's like, Dana, are these guys really at my level? Blah blah blah. Like, and now is like, come on here.
I mean, Khabib told him all that last time they talked, right? I mean, this is not new. Any interview that you've ever.
The thing is, we didn't need that Carney marketing BS for that fight
No,
card.
we didn't.
We didn't need it for UFC 257 because Conor was there.
Yeah.
People were not going to buy Conor because of maybe he'll fight Khabib again, blah, blah, blah. Like, come on here.
No, it was ridiculous. It didn't make any sense to me. And if you've listened to any interview Khabib has done, they've all been like in Russian, so they've been translated. But he's never minced his words about no, I'm done. Uh, it was just the UFC that was saying no, he might come back. Look,
I mean,
Khabib.
I doubted it just because, once again, fighters are terrible liars, and retirements are
Uh,
usually meaningless. But I mean, why does it have to be for a trilogy, or not a trilogy, a rematch with Conor or whoever? Why can't it be the dream fight with GSP? If GSP wants it and it's non-title, and he relinquishes the title and has a retirement fight with GSP, and GSP wanted the fight, I say go ahead.
uh, I don't see any look. I don't see any problem with that either, personally. But for some reason, the UFC, I imagine they don't want to acquiesce to financial demands for whatever reason. Uh, Look, and whether I'm not here to tell you that Khabib is never going to fight in the UFC again ever. I don't know that. But even if you want to say this is kind of the typical MMA 18-month sabbatical that a lot of guys mean when they say I'm retiring, you still got to take the belt off him and move the division forward.
If
So
Khabib
that,
sticks to this retirement, I will have infinite respect for him, and I will infinitely respect the decision.
yeah, I have no issues with him if he chooses to stay retired. I mean, I'm not cast. There's no judgment from me either way in that respect. But everything he said so far indicates that he's done. And again, whether or not that means in 2 years I potentially come back, I find that unlikely. But like you said, MMA retirements are kind of like pro wrestling retirements. At least they have been historically. But at the moment, you have to move the division along because every indicator from the man himself is I'm not going to fight again. So yeah, you've got a great top of that division at
But
lightweight.
I was laughing when Dana White was walking back on all the Khabib nonsense last night. Like,
The funniest thing in the
because
world.
I was so angry. I was so angry, like, because they sent me an email alert. Like, they sent out an email alert, like, you better tune in for this. Like, and all he said was, Habib wants to see something spectacular, and he might come back and fight when it. Like, come on, that's a non-announcement. That is not a real announcement. It's nothing, nothing.
Have you seen the picture floating around of from the octagon as Poirier's getting his hand raised and celebrating, and Dana's in the background just looking like he's had a multi-billion-dollar dream shattered?
I
It's the
mean,
funniest thing.
he was basically saying it at the press conference. That could have been like, at first I thought the rematch could have been one of the top three combat sports out. No,
It
Habib Conor rematch would have been the biggest fight of all time.
I mean, look, in all fairness, a Khabib Conor rematch would absolutely have been. I mean, their first one is the best-selling UFC pay-per-view ever. Their
Right?
rematch could have been bigger.
No,
Uh,
I understand that, but I mean, look, that's the sport. I mean,
yeah.
um, for a long time, Jones and Silva would have been that would have been the fight to make, because
For how many years was it GSP and Silva that we all wanted to see?
right. But I mean, for a number of years, neither Jones or Silva were interested in that fight. And when they were finally coming around to it, that's when Silva got knocked out by Chris Weidman, and all that went flying out the window. So I mean, it's just kind of, sometimes these things just aren't meant to be, and you have to kind of just deal with it. But then the sport keeps moving, and even when it has these kind of like valleys, new stars come up and new matchups come up, like Israel Adesanya.
Yeah.
Whenever we have moments when like when it looks like the big stars are either winding down, or they start losing, or they retire, or whatever, and then new stars come up and have their runs. That's the way of combat sports.
It's the way of any individual athletic endeavor.
Yeah.
Like anything. I mean, not even just that. Like
In,
even like music.
in
You know, musicals.
Israel's stardom kind of just came out of nowhere. He was very successful in a very short amount of time, like very few people are able to do.
Yeah, when he came in, man, he exploded very, very
And
quickly.
I don't know if I'm kind of hoping like Max's recent performance will make him a bigger star. I don't know if it will, but I hope it does. I feel like he should be
I
a
don't.
much bigger star.
I think at this point, I don't know what it would take for Max to hit a level higher than he is. You know, I just don't know.
Like I would say he's like a bigger draw than say like Demetrius Johnson ever was.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But I still feel like like
Hey,
his
DJ's fighting for the one belt pretty soon.
right. I just kind of feel like Max should have been, should be more respected and highly regarded, but whatever.
Max is Max is very highly regarded. The problem that Max and a lot
I
of
just feel like people weren't celebrating this guy when he was like knocking out Jose Aldo, Pettis, and Frank, and beating Frank
the,
in,
look, the problem that Max had was he just didn't appeal to the widest possible. Like anyone who watches more than 7 MMA events a year has tremendous respect and borderline
Okay.
reverence for Max
But I think
Holloway.
he's a fun guy. I think he's a fun guy. Like I think he's got a fun personality. Like I can see why Mighty Mouse was a bit of an acquired taste and why he was a bit dry at times.
Uh, yeah, I mean DJ's better on his Twitch stream than he was on the mic,
Yeah.
but Max is kind of the same way actually. I don't know if you've checked out his any of the times he streamed
I
on
know he's
occasion.
into gaming, but I think he handles himself well in front of the camera.
Yeah, it's
But I think
I think it's
overlooked
just
by
one of those things. Different people will reach larger demographics than others based on, in some cases, things you can't possibly understand. Why do some people just, what's the line that, when people talk about scouting talent, if you could put it, if you understood the formula, everyone would have it.
right. Yeah.
And it's weird. And I agree with you. Max is phenomenal. I
Mm.
don't know why he never
But
kind of broke out of the MMA bubble, but
yeah, I think I lost my train of thought. But new stars eventually emerged, even though like this look, I don't think a rematch would have gone that differently, to be frank.
if you
So
mean in terms of outcome, no, it probably goes about the same.
I'm not
Let's
really
just say
heart.
4
I
fights.
mean, Dana is heartbroken, but
Well,
I just feel I
dude,
feel Khabib
if
is
you
one of the
lost,
worst possible matchups for Conor. I think it's probably better for Conor in the long run that he never fights Khabib ever again.
you say that because you have no financial stake in it.
I for Conor's well-being, it's probably better. Financially. It's probably better for Conor in the long run if you think about it,
No, no,
because you can get
Conor,
more fights out of Conor this way.
no. How many times would Conor have to fight to equal? Let's say their rematch did. Uh,
No,
let's say it
this
did
fight.
two and a.
I mean,
Hang on.
look, he had this fight, which was not a rematch with Khabib, and it was a pretty big
Did
fight.
1.6. So let's say, and I think we could, if that rematch with Khabib happened, I don't think 3 is out of the question. So
Okay.
take whatever he made for this fight and double it.
Okay.
He would have to have this fight in terms of commercial success twice to equal that 1.
Well, we'll see how
To say that,
Conor bounces back from this, but I feel like
and for the record, to say nothing of Dana's sad because the UFC gets the lion's share of that money. Dana's sad because he watched a 3 million
right.
buy pay-per-view go up in smoke.
I'm sure ESPN and WME and IMG are not happy about it either. But I mean, again, this is the nature of the sport, and you have to, you can't because it's not WWE and not pro wrestling, you can't write the outcome, and you have to deal with, the either the less popular fighter or the upset winner. You kind of have to just deal with it. That's part of the sport.
Yep. And I mean, again, there's not a bad, if we're talking just about quality of fights, there's not a bad combination at the top of lightweight. There's nothing approximating the commercial success that either Khabib or Conor represents. But again, Poirier Gaethje rematch, Oliveira and Chandler, Oliveira and Poirier, Gaethje and Gaethje and Oliveira, whatever. Yeah, there's no bad combination.
Yeah,
they're all great fights.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way lightweight stacks up at the moment. Let's see. Next up, do you want to just do quick hits for the rest of these? I mean, there's some decent stuff to talk about, but I don't think there's anything.
I don't really think we need to dive too much deeper into the rest of this card.
Okay.
We got.
Yeah, okay, so Joanne Calderwood defeats Jessica Eye via unanimous decision, 230-27s, 129-28. I don't really have anything good to say about this fight. I look forward to Valentina killing poor Joanne Calderwood, because that's probably how that would go. Mahmoud Muradov defeated Andrew Sanchez via TKO, 259 of the third. This was a decent fight. Muradov is legit. I think I picked him coming into this. He's on a fairly long winning streak. This is his second win in the UFC. He's, again, I'm not saying champion, but he's probably should be fighting someone, I don't know, someone ranked between like 12 and 18. I know the UFC doesn't release anything below 15, but somewhere in that, above 20 space. He's a very, very legitimate rising talent for them. Another upset of someone the UFC was trying to push, Marina Rodriguez defeated Amanda Ribas via TKO, 54 seconds of the second. I picked Ribas last week. Her cage cutting was just really not good. And when you just follow your opponent around, it's easy for them to know where you are and then punish you for being where you're going to be. That's kind of what happened here. Ribas has plenty of time. She's young. The UFC likes her. She's got a really bubbly personality, and I'm not using that euphemistically for her physical appearance. She is a genuinely kind of outgoing, affable human being. So they're going to try to rehab her a little bit. Rodriguez was just a kind of a bad style matchup, it turns out. But women's strawweight, a very good division still. And that was your pay-per-view card. As for the rest of the prelims, Arman Sarukian defeated Matt Frevola via unanimous decision, 30-27 twice and then a 30-26. This fight came about in the craziest way possible. Matt Frevola was supposed to fight Atman Izatar. Then, the day of the weigh-ins, the UFC announces they've cut Izatar. Dana then gives an interview. Now, how much of this, I think what he's saying is mostly true here. Again, how much you choose to believe Dana on any given thing is up to you, but his recitation of events is that part of the protocols for COVID that they have there, everyone who goes into the bubble gets a bracelet, and then you can't get it, then no one else can come in without it, that kind of thing. Izatar and some of his team cut off their bracelets, gave them to other team members, I think, who were not supposed to be in there. They came in with some kind of undisclosed bag that they then tried to deliver to his hotel balcony. I mean, it's one of the it's insane. It's absolutely crazy. And for the record, I'm in 100% agreement with the UFC's decision here to cut the guy after that. What else are you supposed to do? And for whatever it's worth, if you haven't looked into Kareem Zidane, has some reporting on Atman Izatar. If Zidane's reporting is accurate, and the man is probably the best genuine journalist and not kind of the hype guy that a lot of
Where is
PR
this
that a lot
story?
of I don't know. You'd have to look. I forget where it is exactly. Zidane has just touched on Izatar's history a little bit in some of his writing. Apparently, Izatar's got a bit of a sketchy hit past. So Izatar was out. Arman Sarukian was supposed to fight Nasrat Haqparast. Haqparast had a medical issue related to his weight cut, I think. Non-COVID, at least, is what we've been told. Sarukian missed weight anyway, but they matched up Sarukian and Frivola. Good win for Sarukian. Sarukian's a problem, man. He's still got some stuff to iron out in his game, but he's legit. He's very legitimate. Brad Tavares defeated Antonio Carlos Jr. via unanimous decision, 230-27, 129-28. Fight sucked. Juliana Pena defeated Sarah McMahon via rear naked choke, 339 of the third. I have to bring up one thing specifically as it relates to this. After the fight, Pena said that she wants Amanda Nunes to stop ducking her. Nunes responded on Twitter.
What?
Saying,
She said that?
What? Pena? Yeah, she said Amanda Nunes, stop ducking me. I'm the title challenger at 135.
Okay.
Nunes' response was, really, I'm ducking you? You couldn't even become a legitimate contender. Nina Ansaroff got in on the dogpiling of Pena by saying, hey, remember when you were supposed to fight? She replied to Amanda Nunes and said, hey, weren't you two supposed to fight? And then, Pena lost. And to just complete the total burial, Amanda Nunes replied to Ansaroff with just twice. I appreciate taking your shot, but Nunes just buried her with that. Just gravedigger, bulldoze the earth over that. You got buried there. You lost that battle of words badly. Marcin Prachnio defeated Khalil Roundtree via unanimous decision, 29-28 on all three scorecards. Fight mostly sucked. Movsar Evloev defeated Nick Lentz via split decision, 29-28. Whoever scored this fight for Lentz needs to be fired. I was 30-27 for Evloev. I don't disagree. I can see the argument for Lentz getting the first. I have no earthly idea under what scoring criteria you could have possibly given Lentz the second and no one gave him the third. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. Shame on that judge. Shame on you. Lentz retired. He announced on Instagram he took some eye pokes in not this fight, but the one before it that resulted in, I think he said losing like 40% of the vision in one of his eyes. Lentz had a long career. This was kind of coming sooner rather than later. Evloev is a very, very legitimate prospect at featherweight. I think this was 14-0 for him. He's legit. He is very, very legitimate. Pay attention to him. And kicking everything off, Amir Albazi defeated Zhalgas Zhumagulov via unanimous decision, 29-28. Pretty standard flyweight fight. Most people, won't see it or care, but I kind of enjoyed it. So anyway, that's the rest of that card. Again, some decent performances, a couple of rising guys on the kind of the undercard section. So, Jeff, anything you want to touch on? I know you're a big Joanne Calderwood fan, if nothing else.
Yeah, I'm happy she won, I guess. So I'm glad she won at least. Let's see. Marina Rodriguez got a good win over Amanda Ribas, so good for her. Amanda Ribas had been doing well before this fight, so this was a good win for Rodriguez. Yeah, that's about it.
Alrighty. Again, that was UFC 257. UFC came out swinging with this pay-per-view, and their next couple are all, their entire first quarter of pay-per-views are really solid quality-wise. I mean, this was kind of a two-fight card. Fortunately, those two fights delivered more or less. The next few ones, they put a lot of value into those. So you can look out for that. All right. There was a Wednesday card, because of course there was, UFC on ESPN 20. I think I'm just going to go through these, unless I'll ask you right off the top. Is there anything about these that stand out to you off the top of your head?
I mean, solid workman-like performance by Michael Chiesa. It's not going to win him a lot of fans. Kind of what I expected from that fight for the most part. Chiesa's just really good dominant grappler.
Heck of a scrambler.
I feel like I felt watching that fight he could have maybe done some more damage from the top. You know?
I can see that. He had to be very careful because most of the time when he had top position, he never had the kind of control you want to be able to really
Right.
unload. So he had to resort to just kind of
He's very
sneaking stuff in.
reserved. I felt he was a little too reserved, was my feeling.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, a lot of that was because of what
And
Magny was doing.
Magny, I'll give him this. Magny is he is very durable and resilient. And he was resilient, but I mean,
Kind of feel like the book on Magny's written at this point. Yeah.
yeah. But
Anyway,
I like Chiesa. I hope he gets a big fight next, but we'll see.
so in your main event, Chiesa defeats Neil Magny unanimous decision, 49-46 on all three scorecards. Warley Alves defeated Munir Lazzez via TKO body kicks and punches, 235 of the first. Alves coming off a significant layoff. Nice finish from him. Isaac Villanueva defeated Vinicius Moreira via knockout punch, 39 seconds of the second round. Fight sucked. Finish was good. And this fight led to the best moment on UFC commentary in a long time, when Paul Felder, after listening to Villanueva's post-fight promo, likened his speech patterns to that of Boomhauer from King of the Hill, which is not an inaccurate comparison. I deeply appreciated the reference, Mr. Felder. Thank you. And which is not to say anything bad about how the way Villanueva speaks. Every region has idiosyncrasies. He happens to sound a lot like a little bit like that. So I needed the moment of levity in this card because this was a drag. This card was like 15 fights long. 14, I think. 14 or 15. I'm not going to count again. I don't care enough to do so. Viviane Araújo defeated Roxanne Modafferi via unanimous decision, 230-27s, 130-26. Modafferi just outgunned everywhere. Araújo's a very legitimate flyweight prospect. She's ranked, I think. Her only loss in the UFC was to Jessica Ai. I missed weight for that fight pretty badly, actually. I weighed 131 for that. Araújo should probably be in a title eliminator next. That's just kind of where she is in the division. Matt Schnell defeated Tyson Nam via split decision. This was a fun fight. This was a good one. Lerone Murphy defeated Douglas Silva de Andrade via unanimous decision. 29-28 and then a 30-27. Good win for Murphy. Murphy got to show off a little bit more than he has in the past, so solid stuff there. Omar Yakhmedov defeated Tom Breeze via arm triangle, 141 of the second. Akhmedov has some very clear limitations on his game, but he's a handful for everybody, man. He caused a lot of problems for Weidman when he fought him. Ultimately lost, but he's not an easy out. Then for the prelims on that, Ricky Simone defeated Gaetano Perello. And that is Perello. He's from Belgium, so that's kind of how that's supposed to be pronounced. Submitted him, arm triangle, 4 minutes of the second. Typical Ricky Simone fight. Sumu Darji defeated Zarek Adeshev via unanimous decision. Fun little flyweight fight. That was 229-28 and a 30-27. Dalcha Lungiambula defeated Marcus Perez via unanimous decision, 29-28. That fight sucked. The younger brother of champion Davison Figueiredo, Francisco Figueiredo, defeated Jerome Rivera via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Not a bad fight, but nothing terribly memorable either. I don't want to compare. I don't want to make the obvious comparison as far as brothers in the UFC goes, but Francisco looks a lot like Davison. Their faces are very, very similar. At lightweight, Mike Davis defeated Mason Jones via unanimous decision, 29-28. This was a fun little brawl. That was your fight of the night, actually. It was a good one. Another potential bantamweight rising prospect, Umar Nurmagomedov, one of the cousins of Khabib, defeated Sergey Morozov via technical submission rear naked choke, 239 of the second. Umar has a more refined striking game than Khabib. He has a lot of kicks, but his grappling is very, very good as well. He's a beast. He is going to be a problem for that division. And kicking everything off, Manon Fiorot defeated Victoria Leonardo via TKO head kick and punches, 408 of the second. Fiorot looked pretty darn good. She got to the style matchup, let her kind of showcase her striking. But flyweight is a division that could use more bodies and people who will get some time to develop. So solid. So she seems to be a pretty solid addition. All right. Anyway, that's the rest of that card. So Jeff, anything else that you wanted to touch on briefly from that? Anything stand out to you?
Well, good for Worley Alves kind of coming back and having a good performance. A guy, started off really hot in UFC and then just kind of petered out after the win over Colby Covington. Good win though. Started out let's see, went 4-0, then lost back-to-back fights against Brian Barberena, Kamaru Usman, won 2 more, lost to James Krause, and kind of a weird career track, but
Yeah, inactivity's been a problem for him recently.
Welterweight is a pretty competitive, tough division anyway.
Yes, it is. All right. Anyway, that's those events. Both of my reports, if you're interested, can be found in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. Thank you all very much for that. As far as that goes, I appreciate any and all support you guys can give me for that. I know there's a lot of places that you can go to get what I do, and I really do appreciate the fact that some of you choose to read my work as it pertains to that. So thank you. I again friendly appreciate it. All right, couple of small news items here. Let's start off with something that I wish to laugh about. So in the lead up to UFC 257, Dana White in particular had been very outspoken about how much he hates the illegal streaming. There's 2 issues I want to talk about here related to this. Both of which I can laugh about, but we're going to kind of blend them here. Again, just took the opportunity to re-up his stance about hating the piracy of his product, which is entirely his right, as it is people stealing his content. Unfortunately, Dana White is not the best at kind of arguing his case.
Articulating.
That too. What kind of came about from this? He said, we have found one of the illegal streamers, and we are listening to his phone calls. We are watching his house, as though Dana is somehow attached to law enforcement here. The only relevant thing he said that he has any actionable influence over was that if they're arrested, I want to press charges, which is he would be one of the people that would be a relevant claim for. So he said, and as soon as this person so and so posts that link, we're gonna arrest them. They're going to be charged, and I'm going to seek the full extent of prosecution that I can. Again, the language he used was hilariously out of touch for the authority he actually has. But that was kind of the stance. Then after the event, someone asked him, "So hey, what happened with that?" And the story he gives is, well, the person we were watching came out and said, I won't be streaming UFC 257. Here's how you buy it legally, and then they shut down their streaming site. This is the
Did that even
biggest.
actually happen?
I don't know. I have found 0 corroborating evidence or statements, and until I have them, I'm calling BS on everything Dana White says related to this. This was the most. As soon as I heard his soundbite from that, I about fell out of my chair laughing. It is just the dumbest thing. It's this was just so, look. I'm not here to argue like the morality, or the ethics of internet piracy. I don't think there's a leg to stand on for them. But this
just that how
saga,
militant he was, like, we're gonna get this guy if he turns his stream on and all that. We're gonna knock his door down and we're gonna arrest him and all that. That kind of thing. Is that what you find ridiculous?
that, and then again his story at the end. Like, my words, he saw an interview I did, and the very power and force of my delivery convinced this person to change their life. Like, get out of here, you bald hack. It was so stupid. Just all of it was, it's the funniest thing.
Was
and
the
it's
event, but was the event not pirated at all, or?
No, this was pirated a lot.
So
like hang on. That's kind of the thing. Like, if you even if you were to take Dana at his word that this is exactly what happened, they found one person streaming this who would have had to have been based in the United States, because if they're working with the FBI to kind of combat internet piracy, which again, I'm not objecting to that on moral grounds.
Okay.
But that would have to be localized to the United States. The FBI has no jurisdiction anywhere else. If there's some, Canadian streaming it, what are you going to do?
Because, like,
there's so many European countries
overseas get the pay-per-views for free, don't they, with their TV deals?
Yeah, and some European countries don't even have anything close to the same internet piracy laws that we do here in the United States. So if you stream something on a server and website hosted on one of these countries, you can do that without actually breaking the law. like international law about copyright, as far as this goes, is not as concrete and enforceable as it is in other areas.
I also heard people were complaining about the ESPN stream.
Yes, this is the other thing I wanted to touch on. Of all the times you could have said, I'm going to go after internet pirates, and there were a bunch of people on Twitter posting their screenshots side by side. Here's my ESPN app that I have bought paid to watch this pay-per-view, giving me error signs, not logging in, whatever, any number of issues. Here's the illegal stream. Everything's running fine. Now, I forget the gentleman who put this out. I want to say the last name was Winter. I want to get this right, so hang on. I believe I saved the relevant tweet. Would have been yesterday. Find it. Compelling podcasting, I know. That's John Nash.
Honestly, I don't take issue with, going after streamers.
Neither do I.
I think some fans are a little entitled on this issue. Like,
horribly.
I do think there is a bit of an issue with pricing, and I think we should be getting a break with like ESPN Plus subs and all that. Like, I think there should be like more promotional deals.
This was the first event. Yeah, this was the first event after they hiked the price up again, right?
Yeah,
this was like a $70+ event.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just feel like there should be more to entice fans to buy more pay-per-views.
Like a streaming service that actually works.
I mean, honestly, ESPN Plus, I don't really have many complaints about, other than there are a lot of ads, commercial ads.
I have not had the same problems that others have had when it comes to using it, but enough people have had enough problems that I know that it's not smoke and mirrors. This is a real. I mean,
Okay, but
there's.
I haven't experienced any major issues or outages yet. But to me, I just think more than the outages, there just should be like something like with Disney Plus, like I did a Founders Circle thing where I subscribed for 3 years, and basically I'm getting it for less than $4 a month to subscribe for 3 years. Like, I would maybe even do that for like pay-per-views. Like, let's say I bought into 24 months of pay-per-views, but like I got them at an incredibly like amazing value. Something, I don't know, something.
Well, here's the truth about kind of combating piracy. You're never going to get rid of it entirely. You just aren't.
Right.
But if you look at the two entities that I think kind of figured out how to fight it the best, you've got the music industry, which again, you can find free music everywhere. It is a huge problem for anyone trying to monetize that. But it turns out the vast majority of people are willing to pay as long as they can get it, cheaply, have quality service.
Yeah.
I mean, again, look at like iTunes and Spotify. iTunes was $1 a song, and that alone basically killed the majority of file sharing sites for any number of reasons.
Right.
The other company that has a pretty decent handle on this, believe it or not, is the WWE. They have been losing television ratings for years. I mean, Raw, not a joke. At this point, Raw on Monday nights has lower ratings than TNA's ill-fated attempt to go head-to-head with them on Monday.
Right.
TNA's Impact, their debut Impact against WWE, drew a bigger rating than Raw does now.
Right.
But they have a decent service in terms of the network that not only guarantees them revenue, but actually functions as intended. And
there's not a lot of growth on the network, though. They kind of just fluctuate at the same subscriber base, don't they?
I'm not in the weeds enough on that to know. But look, for whatever they're charging you a month for that, anybody that's paying for that, suddenly that's one less person that's streaming, and they don't have these kind of hiccups. Now, the point I was getting to before, this gentleman, again, I think the last name was Winter. I can't remember his name. I deeply apologize for that. He had done some work with, I think, HBO when the Mayweather-McGregor pay-per-view happened. And if you'll recall, that had horrible issues of droppage in coverage. And he said that in that case, the problem was a lot of people buying at the last minute. I don't know the breakdown of pay-per-view purchases in terms of how many buy, at what distance from the start of the event. But for Mayweather-McGregor, enough people tried to buy it right before the event, like same day, same 2-hour block is when it's supposed to start, that it overloaded their servers, and they had to take them down and bring them back up. And there were tons of technical issues with that event. I was covering that event, and I could basically not watch the first 4 rounds. It was awful. That fight happened 4 years ago. You should not have that same problem crop up 4 years later in the same way. And apparently we did.
That's one of the issues with streaming media.
It can be. Sudden influx of large numbers. I don't know. And to be fair, that's only a possibility. I don't know.
It should give you a free replay. I don't know what the standard is now, but didn't back in the day, if you ordered an event, you would get it you used to get the next one for a replay for free? Is
Usually you
that or
get
is that?
usually they would immediately replay the event. I don't know if they still do that or not.
Uh-huh.
But that was I mean, again, old boxing, old WWE events in particular was like, hey, the Royal Rumble goes from 7 to 10, and then starting at 10, we're going to rebroadcast it. And if you bought it, you could just watch. The rebroadcast was included in your initial purchase.
Right.
I don't know if that's still true. I don't know. Um, I don't know what the policy is from ESPN Plus about this, but there were a lot of people who had a lot of technical difficulties, and a lot of them were very vocal about it. A
And you
lot of
can't
fighters.
really, since it's streaming on ESPN Plus, you can't really DVR it. Can you DVR it if you have like a smart TV? I don't know.
I don't know about the smart TV interaction. I think if you, I think I have to. I'm
Okay.
not sure about this interaction, so please no one quote me. I think if you have bought the pay-per-view, you can access it at any time. And then after a certain period of time, it'll become free to anyone on either ESPN Plus
Oh, okay.
or Fight Pass.
Okay. I'll have to
So
look into that because I am paying for an ESPN Plus subscription.
as am I, and I use it. The service is annoying at times, and I don't just mean the ads. There's issues of integration. There's issues
I
of
think the UI
keeping
could
things
be a
up.
little. I think it's not the friendliest UI. I think.
It, that is very true.
I
Its
think
search function
now
is not
now
great.
I think when I'm watching, I do watch stuff on my phone from time to time. I think the UI integration on a mobile device, like when you're watching the fights, I like that setup because it gives you all sorts of stats and nice graphics and stuff. That part I like, but I think they're like when I'm watching it on the computer or on my game console, I think there are UI elements that could make it a little easier. Like I think that's one reason Netflix is so appealing and why Netflix does so well. It has a very good, easy to use UI interface. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think they
Um,
have like the UI interface. I think for Netflix is so good. Like I feel like almost anyone can use it. Like I feel like a toddler could use it and figure it out, basically.
Probably. So last thing on this, but if you want to know how many people were dissatisfied with the technical side of that event, the hashtag refund was in fact the number 3 trending thing in the United States at one point during this event. Um, this this was a technical disaster for the UFC and for the good folks at ESPN Plus, to the point that people, including myself, made the joke that I guess the only streamer Dana was able to find was the person running the ESPN server.
Ha
It,
ha ha ha.
it was there's a lot of people who were deeply, deeply unhappy and dissatisfied with this. A lot of people did get refunds. Yeah, this was a technical black eye for everyone involved on that level.
So your stream worked okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Don't ask me any more than that, but yes.
Not great, but
Okay. Hey, for the record, I do buy these, but when the technical issues started, because
uh-oh.
because I buy it, I don't feel any sort of moral or ethical culpability in having a more technically sound fallback option than your glitchy service.
Look, there's definitely some constructive criticism, and hopefully they will work on that. But I think more than anything, I think there needs to be, I don't know, if they could figure out some sort of pay-per-view promotion or something for the ESPN subscribers, I think that would be very good. So I don't know, something to entice fans, especially during a global pandemic, when we need that.
You would like to think that, with unemployment the way it is, and the state of the world, that saying, hey, $75 to watch Conor and Dustin maybe wasn't I mean, well, hey, what do I know? They sold, north of 1.5 million buys on that. So, who am I, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people taking a tenth of that $600 check and throwing it onto this. All right. Speaking loosely of the government here in the United States and federal regulations and whatnot, the last bit of news I have here is something forward-looking as it kind of pertains to the UFC. The new presidential administration here in the United States, I am not very clear about this. I don't talk politics here as an espousal of my personal view. I try, but where they intersect, they need to be discussed. The Biden administration is, at this particular point, considering more severe national lockdowns. They've kind of tossed around the idea, I saw reported, of kind of what Canada is doing right now. Canada at the moment is starting to implement, or in the process of implementing, something like what New Zealand and other countries have, which is anyone that comes into the country, whether they have symptoms or not, has to be quarantined for 14 days.
Here's what I'm reading on USA Today. Apply to non-U.S. citizens who have been in Brazil, Ireland, the UK, and much of Europe. Excuse me. This was according to a White House official who is not authorized to speak ahead of the official announcement. So an official announcement has still not been made yet.
I imagine that will be forthcoming. But yeah, so point being, they're looking at, that is something that the current administration is looking at implementing. That would be a logistical hurdle of some significance for the UFC to overcome if they wanted to continue to have if they wanted to have a lot of events in the United States. Now, right now, they are currently projected to return to the Apex facility starting with, I believe, their next event, which will be on February, whatever the first February is, the 6th. That's it. Good job, Robert. The Overeem and Volkov fight is supposed to be at their facility in Las Vegas. If that goes into effect, that's going to be, again, kind of a headache for them having to get people in and potentially out of the country. And I don't mean that nefariously.
Not impossible.
Not impossible, just a significant hurdle. Especially with, if you look at some of that card. I think Overeem trains in Denver at the moment, but Volkov, I believe, is still located in Russia.
The CDC recommends a 7-day quarantine for air travelers arriving in the United States after being tested.
Yeah, and again, that's what the CDC recommends. Again, places like New Zealand and Australia, you come into the country, doesn't matter if you have symptoms or what, you are in a hotel for 2 weeks and you're paying for it. And then you can re-enter society.
But how do you explain when you have places that are so heavily locked down and the numbers just aren't changing or aren't going down?
Well, the reality is that places that have locked down that extremely have kind of been over it. I think New Zealand is still without COVID cases. I'd have to double check that, but New Zealand has
California.
How heavily locked down are you?
We're like in the heaviest lockdown out of anyone.
I kind of mean that specifically. Like when I say how heavily locked down are you, are people still coming in and out of your state?
I think I'm actually not sure on that. Let's see. I think
that's a significant component. General population density is still a component. And there's also, again,
I think there's a stay-at-home order. Currently ordered to stay at home or at their place of residence except for permitted work, local shopping, or other permitted errands, or as otherwise authorized. That's as of January 15th.
You see all those caveats they threw onto that? That's kind of where it's biting you. Look, I'm not a big advocate for lockdowns like that. They're not a long-term solution. This is known by everyone, including the CDC when they recommend them on occasion. I I mean, partially you guys are not as heavily locked. You guys are somewhat heavily locked down, but again, places like New Zealand, they closed their borders. So, and then said, okay, we're going to this is going to run in the country to the extent that it's going to run. We're going to fight it as best we can. But once it's done, we are going to go out of our way to make sure no one bringing it that it never gets back into.
I can't really fault that, honestly. Especially
look,
now that there are variant strains coming around now, aren't there?
Yeah. And I mean, look, we have the vaccine starting to kind of roll out here in the United States. Apparently,
the vaccine is not a cure-all.
No, it isn't. It's multiple shots. I think 2. And apparently, it's still transmissible. Like you won't get sick, but you could still pass it to other people.
It's not a very good vaccine, in my opinion.
Well, you try to deal with a vaccine for a highly contagious, kind of not full on airborne, but kind of airborne disease. It's those are always tricky. I mean, the flu is the same way, right? You have stuff that's supposed to help, but nothing is guaranteed. So, point being, if the Biden administration does try to implement those particular restrictions, it might throw a handful of monkey wrenches into the UFC's plans. I want to double check how long UFC's set to be back in the States.
They might give sports leagues special exemptions. It's like a lot of. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Because some movie productions have had to shut down, but I think some film productions are still allowed to go ahead, even with all the businesses shutting down and everything. So sports leagues might give them exemptions, but we'll see.
Again, that's not impossible, but the UFC's relationship with this administration is not what it was with the previous administration.
True, but one thing we can say in Dana White and the UFC's favor, they did sort of do a good job handling this and proving it can be done and can be done safely and creating their own bubble and testing everyone, making sure those rules are followed and setting up strict guidelines. After they initially handled this very poorly, I think.
Yeah, once they finally kind of got a protocol hammered out, they still have people that pop for it. It's still certainly a problem, but much flack as I give Dana, and I try to think it's all deserved. I try to give him credit where it's due. When he said someone has to be first, that's true. There is always a guinea pig.
My problem with the way he went about it the wrong way, and he said,
absolutely. Did you see that?
The event, hang on. To do the event on the Indian reservation was ridiculous. He should not have done that.
Did you see that ridiculous propaganda video he put out a few weeks ago that has since been taken down?
Which one?
Oh, the one about that blames media for being horrible naysayers and then glorifies his accomplishments. It was political propaganda, basically.
Some of those points I think were a little fair.
Sure. If you wanted to,
some of those points were valid, but I think early on he went about this the wrong way, and he did not publicly manage it. He was too overly aggressive, and again trying to publicly do the event and being so cagey about where they were doing the event. It should not have been done that way. It was the wrong way to do it. Yeah, that was my issue with the handling of this.
Yeah, completely. All right, so the UFC is scheduled to spend all of February at the Apex. Again, how reliable that winds up being, we'll have to wait and see. But that's the schedule as it currently
Because
stands.
like just to break this down, like let's see now, 259, which is scheduled for early March. So that's just over a month. And we're still in this pandemic, vaccine or no. So we have Jan Blachowicz, who's based in Poland. So he's based in Europe. He's fighting Adesanya, where does Adesanya live where does he train out of right
New
now?
Zealand.
Okay, so can he even get out of New Zealand?
Yeah. Oh, you can leave, but
Okay.
when you come back, I don't know. They might. I don't know if they quarantine you for a period of time before you leave. I know that when
Okay.
you come back into the country, you are quarantined for 14 days before you can
Okay.
re-enter
So
society.
Amanda Nunez, she's in Brazil.
No, I
And
think she lives. She's no, no. She lives in
she's
Florida.
in the U.S. now.
I'm pretty sure because she
Okay.
trains out of ATT. I think she lives in. I'm pretty sure she lives in Florida.
Okay. So maybe not for her. But what about Megan Anderson? Does she
I
train in the U.S.?
I don't know where. I think she does her training camp with James Krause in Missouri. I don't know if she
Okay.
lives there full time.
Peter Yan is from Russia.
Russia,
He's
lives in
also supposed
Russia,
to fight on
trains in
that card.
Russia. He
Uh,
lives and trains in Russia.
and then just officially announced Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic for 260, which is supposed to happen March 27th. Um, Ngannou, I think he might be living and training out of Las Vegas now, though, so that might not be a
I
problem.
bel I believe so. I believe so. Yes, I know he
But
trains at Vegas.
What about Volkanovski? He's also on that card. He's also in Australia. Australia has had some problems with the virus, haven't they?
Yeah, Volkanovski splits his training time between Australia and New Zealand. He's associated with the city
Okay.
kickboxing guys. So between those two places.
So not just so Blachowicz might not be an issue, but that might be it's something to keep an eye on for right now, basically. Gilbert Burns, if his fight with
Well,
Kamaru
Burn
Usman happens,
well
we,
Burns lives in Florida too.
okay.
I'm pretty sure. I'd have to double
Well, I
check that,
mean,
but
you
I'm
also
pretty
have
sure.
to worry about fighters getting the virus, and you have
Well,
to be.
the problem isn't so much the guys at the top of the card. It's
Hmm.
more if you look at the entire card, how many fighters on any given UFC event that takes place in the United States are flying in for that fight?
Well,
You know,
I would say
it
whittle
it's a
down the
lot more.
process.
It's a
Make
lot
your
more than
job
it used to be.
easier.
Well, sure, it's less of a headache to replace a preliminary fight than a main event.
Shorten the cards for Robert Winfrey.
I would not object. The fighters would because they'd stop getting paid.
Right,
I would not object.
right.
So yeah, that's a
But yeah,
potential thing we'll have to be keeping an eye on.
yeah,
What steps?
definitely keeping an eye on. But until we get we still have to see what the announcements are going to be,
Yeah, we need a more detailed plan
yeah,
from the administration, but
we'll see.
given my sort of general disenchantment, I suppose you could say, with the general state of American politics, I'm not optimistic. I should be able to say that without triggering anybody in particular. Again,
Think
we try to stay apolitical to the extent that it's possible. To the extent that it's possible, again, they
very good.
intersect sometimes.
I'm in agreement, Robert.
And again, when they intersect and they have to be talked about, I'm happy to do so. I try very hard to keep my general politics away from this because unless it has a specific point to reach related to what we're discussing, otherwise I think it's a little bit masturbatory. All right, let me check Twitter.
But yeah,
See if any.
so now it's a UFC 260 Ngannou Stipe 2 is set for that card. Does not have a location, but ESPN reported that it will likely be in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that seems to be where they're kind of aiming at keeping a lot of stuff at the moment. Again, great fight. We talked a little bit about that last week.
Stipe
Uh,
will win.
I favor Stipe too, but I will not be surprised if Francis knocks him out. Would be very surprised if Francis won a decision. That would surprise
I
me.
just hope he doesn't have people like rubbing towels all over him.
That would be a nice start. He seems to have different people in his corner these days, so I don't think we'll see anything like that. Still might lose.
Okay, here we go. ESPN Brett Okamoto reports Woodley versus Luke at UFC 260 as well. Not official, but that fight's in the works.
Woodley and Luque?
Yeah.
They are. Oh God, you had to bring up Tyron Woodley, didn't you?
Yeah. Your favorite fighter?
My favorite actor now. Have you seen this?
No, what was it?
Oh God. Okay.
Somebody put the music?
How do I say this? I saw a clip involving him. I don't know the full movie in question. I don't want to. I saw nothing but people bad-mouthing it, like in the worst way possible. It involved him. Now this was, I'm going to say this and you have to just trust me, this was not porn. It involved him sticking his dick in a cage with a raccoon. Now, again, movie, so you don't actually see him frontal nudity. But I mean, like I don't know. I saw the clip and it's on Twitter. Like if you looked, I think the Pissed Off T-Wood account has the clip. Like it was floating around. Grabaka Hitman shared it. A lot of the MMA personalities kind of shared it around.
Is this a real thing?
Yes, it's a real movie. It boggles my mind, but yes.
I watched that MMA movie John Moxley did. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
What was this movie? It was Cage Fighter, Worlds Collide.
I've not seen that.
It's definitely it's like bargain bin movie. Like you pay if you saw this for $1 in the bargain bin at Walmart and you brought it home and watched it, it wouldn't even be worth $1, basically.
Yeah, but a lot like that.
Like this movie has Chuck Liddell, Gina Gershon, basically Gina Gershon playing a female Dana White. Chuck Liddell, Luke Rockhold. Watching Luke Rockhold try to act was a process.
There's a reason he got into modeling where he doesn't have to talk.
Like there's a scene in this movie like where like the main character is this who's also a real life MMA fighter, Alex Montagnani. Like he gets knocked out by a pro wrestler in an MMA fight who's John Moxley, whose character's name is Randy Stone. And he gets like, a new coach, and Luke Rockhold is like his new like hotshot coach. And like they're in the locker room and like some naked fighters walk by and he's like, that's what you get when you're not the champion anymore. Nothing but asses and blank. And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, he's not wrong.
His line delivery, but the line and like his line delivery was like, it made me shake my head. And then, Christian, former WWE superstar Christian, basically playing Ariel Helwani.
Oh, don't tell me that. That makes me want to see it.
It's kind of like you could watch this and like it's like one of the it is one of those so bad it's good kind of things. You could watch and like laugh at it or have it in the background kind of thing, but yeah. So when you the reason I mention this is when you bring up Tyron Woodley in a bad movie, that's what I think of. Because usually when MMA fighters are in a movie, it's like it's not great, It's usually garbage like this, bargain bin garbage.
Yeah, so you can find that you can find that clip again. It was
now
floating
I
around
see this
on
clip
Twitter.
as badly as I don't want to watch it. Now Like I have to see it
You are
now.
you are oddly compelled, aren't you?
I am.
You almost want to see if I'm lying or not. So yeah, yesterday, a little before the event, it was floating around on Twitter.
Is it called Cutthroat City? Is that it?
I don't know what the movie's called. I genuinely have no idea. It. All I saw was this little clip. That's all I got, and that's all I will ever see of that. All right. With that particular bit of mental imagery now forever in your mind, let's move on to plugs and go ahead and close up shop here. So, Jeff, what do you got to plug?
Oh my God, I found the clip.
Oh no.
Oh my God.
Don't do it. Don't save yourself. You know I was being honest. Save yourself.
Oh God. I wish now I want.
I have
hate
no
you now,
regrets.
Robert. This is your fault.
I told you to save yourself. All right. Anyway, moving on. Plugs. What do you got to plug?
Okay,
Apart from
so
well, you have to unplug the bleach for your eyes after that, but on a more serious note.
Wash my eyes out with I want to wash my eyes out with lava after seeing that.
Got to go put out the old mind's eye.
My God, that's gonna give me nightmares. Okay. Oh, so review of WandaVision. If I might have already met WandaVision, reviewed the first 3 episodes over in movies. And that's about it for right now. Yeah.
All right. What do I got? I don't think I have anything too new. Again, the double review from last week. No event this coming Saturday, but we'll be back here next week to preview the event for the 6th of February. I think my schedule picks up in February for stuff I'm going to be doing. Oh, I just got tagged in this. Let me see if I can find it. My schedule for February, very brief preview for this. I will be doing, on the 30th, I will be doing alternate commentary with Mark Rydlich for the boxing bout between Plant and Truex. Caleb Plant was kind of angling for a fight with Canelo. That seems to have gone by the wayside. Canelo signed a 2-fight deal with Eddie Hearn, so he will deal with his mandatory out of Turkey. And then talking about who are they talking about? The name just completely escaped me. Some kind of super fight with Billy Joe Saunders. That's it. To potentially get Canelo another title because he wants all the 168-pound belts. Caleb Plant has one of them is kind of the thinking there. So that still might be on the horizon for him. Starting in February, on Groundhog Day, Mark and I will review the Netflix movie Outside the Wire, which seems to be a giant dud. We'll have a TV party for Disenchantment, Part 3, which I quite enjoyed. Later in the month, movie reviews, stuff like Willy's Wonderland, because movies are dead. I'm kind of looking forward to that, though, for various reasons. So anyway, more on that as it becomes more and more relevant. See you guys. Hopefully you follow my stuff on the Rydlich and Broadcasting Network. You can follow their Facebook page. They're a subgroup of the W2M network in terms of podcasting. So wherever you're listening to this, you can find them via W2M or Wrestling to the Max, that network. I contribute there on occasion when they want me to / I want to. On the rare occasion, those two things intersect. All right. That is going to be it for me as far as plugs go. Thank you all again very, very much for being here and listening. Thank you for listening to us ramble, and remind you that there is a scene of Tyron Woodley having to act like his groin is being attacked by a raccoon. Almost as bad as. Hang on. Almost as bad as poor Mark Boone Jr. in the Too Fast, Too Furious movie, having to act like a rat was attacking him, and having to actually verbalize what was going on. Just the worst dialogue possible. I felt so bad for him in that scene. Oh, the rat, it's scratching me. Oh, God. That's not actually how you do that form of torture anyway, but I've ranted about that particular sequence in that entire franchise in the past. So, for Jeff Harris, who is going to try and save some semblance of his sanity, I'm Robert Winfrey. I gave up on mine a long time ago. As always, everyone, stay safe out there, And please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.